Hello. Um, so let me pack this research that we did for 10 years into this 10-minute presentation. So please help me out in the discussion and with your questions and feedback about that. But actually, this research started 10 years ago when I was working in Moscow on the 24/7 helpline of emergency psychological help. During that 3 years, when I worked there, I received 8,000 calls. And the hardest ones, despite common thoughts and myths, are not the suicidal calls or not calls from people in depression or who are lonely. The toughest and the calls where I felt most helpless were the calls from women who complained about their life, and by the way, also mentioned abusive partners or abusive family. And during that calls, I would never, or I wasn't able to help. Only when there was immediate threat to their children, they agreed to contact shelters. But most of these shelters are now closed in Russia. So the reason, sorry, this is not, and this is not too big. No previous slide. Yeah. The reason why it didn't work, one of the reasons, was core beliefs that these women said, well, I do love him, or I'm sorry for him. He will not survive. I think this is God punishing me for my sins. We had a wedding in church, so I'm not going to go out of this marriage because it will be shameful, and so on and so on. A lot of struggles. And actually, I need to provide you with, sadly, the format is, I hope you see the numbers, but the context in the Russian Orthodox Church is somewhat different than the context in Western Christian denominations that we read about in the research. So this is a church that suffered during the Soviet times, and there is a lot of post-Soviet ideas, myths, intercepted within the church. So majority of those who identify with the Russian Orthodox Church believe that this is a national tradition or this is a moral compass, and only 25% believe that this is a personal relationship to God. This is a way for personal relationship. Out of 70% who identify with Russian Orthodox Church, these are 164 million across the world, not only in Russia. Only 12% actually attend church. And the majority, so 3 times more active participants, are women, are actually women. While also in Orthodox Church, this is an Orthodox tradition, very traditional, there are, of course, gender roles prescribed to women. Women are structurally excluded. They don't have any liturgical authority, and they carry the burden of serving the churches all around. And also during these times, of course, I will not go too much into politics, but of course, there's a lot of struggles because there is opposition within the church, because some priests are arguing how to make church Christian again, because our patriarch is a KGB agent and he's serving the ideology. And so there's a lot of struggles going on different levels. And it's not even mentioning those numbers that you see about the domestic violence rates. We don't have official statistics. This is hidden by Russian government from 2010. They stopped publishing the statistics. So it's 3 times rate of similar sample in 19 European countries of murders of women by their husbands or partners. And also now the numbers from colleagues, I know that numbers are spiking of women who call and who do not go to police. 83% do not go to police because there is no law. Why there is no law? Because Russian Orthodox Church says that this law threatens traditional family values. And also, those who contact police are not helped. Also, when they go to seek treatment, they do not find general practitioners or somebody trauma informed, because still in Russia, they base all the diagnosis on ICD-10, because ICD-11 has other threats to the traditional values. And only in ICD-11, they have CPTSD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder. This is the one diagnosis that you place to a person who suffered from personal abuse for a long time. So how do you address this? So alongside with everything I mentioned, this is a completely invisible group from research. You will not find any publication in peer-reviewed journals, especially, that tries to understand link between religiosity and health in this population. How do you start researching that? Because it's very culturally specific. We cannot just generalize findings from Western Christianity, Western findings. This is we need to adapt some measures and so on. How? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I am a tall man. I forget about it all the time. Hit my head. Thank you. Thank you for saying out loud. So recently, this was actually mentioned during the keynote talk this morning, but I think, I don't know, maybe just raise your hands who are familiar with network analysis, with network approach, oriented a bit. Okay, quick metaphor for you who are not very familiar with it. Like, imagine a complex system of cities that are connected with railways. So we have, hope it works, we have heat map correlation that always shows that everything is connected to everything. But the truth is that there are some hub cities. If you take into account the railway from, I don't know, I came from Hamburg here, so past several cities. So you always go through Zurich, for example. And there is a hub that is actually central and serves as a bridge for all other variables. Another quick example for you who are not familiar with the network analysis, you can reanalyze all of your studies. It's super great because, for example, in ICD-10, we thought of depression, like if you hear a person or your patient having lack of sleep, patient who is tired, or patient who is low on mood, so very sad, what do you think? What is your hypothesis? Depression, right? But now they're reanalyzing ICD-11, also looking at it from the systems thinking approach, saying, well, actually, it's not true. We cannot assume a general factor behind all these symptoms. Actually, lack of sleep leads to fatigue. Fatigue leads to lack of motivation, and then person becomes sad after that. And the reason behind all that is anxiety that caused the lack of sleep. So some variable that was not accounted for. And you can see exactly that in this network analysis approach. So we thought this is the best way to start mapping this field. So there are limitations in network analysis, especially the cross-sectional design. That's why we tried to do the longitudinal one, but sadly in April, Russian government blocked Telegram Messenger completely. We could not gather longitudinal data anymore. So we had to stop with replication. Always justify. It's a good life hack for researchers. So, but it's true that you have to replicate these findings in network analysis because they're not robust enough for just one sample. They're too sensitive to the variables included and to the behavior of concrete samples. So that's why we had similar but totally independent sample gathered. These were the majority women and mothers and employed, but also they're very highly religious. So this is the CRS-5 out of, and it's not, out of 5. You can see that these were actually religiously active women and all trauma exposed. So we had 1,500 in initial sample. We cleared all these data for eligibility criteria and so on, so on, so on. Multivariate outliers. I will not bother you with all the statistics behind it, but at the end, just understand this. The last criteria was trauma exposure, right? After all the statistical filters, and only 4% that were not trauma exposed excluded. So this is just a sample from internet, and 89% of women from this sample from internet suffer from harsh physical, sexual, emotional violence. So just to have a glimpse into statistics. So how do you start measuring it? Of course, you use the ICD. Oh my God. So I'm out of time. ITQ, International Trauma Questionnaire, that includes this complex post-traumatic stress disorder. So not only nightmares, tension, but also affective dysregulation and also disturbance in relationships to others. So when the trauma is prolonged, these are the criteria when a person needs special treatment. Also, since Russian Orthodox Christians are very low when we look into CRS, the centrality of religiosity dimensions, low on experiencing spirituality. We also included the daily spiritual experiences scale, but excluded those items that overlapped with mental health items. So as Koenig blessed us to do in 2024. Also, we adapted, validated religious and spiritual struggle scale. It was a funny, long story about this validation with 40 priests going back and forth with how to attune for Orthodox believers, all of this. So divine struggles when God is perceived as punishing, the interpersonal struggles when church authorities are not treating me well or other believers, moral struggles or struggles with finding ultimate meaning in life. So quick guess. How do you predict the system here? Do you have any hypothesis? I don't have enough time for this, so just first impressions. How would you predict this system would look like between these 14 variables? Now you can check your hypothesis. So here's the network analysis. And you can see all the hubs, the nodes. So these are different variables, the circles. And the more transparent the circle is, the less influence it has. And quickly going through the results. So we see that this network is very dense, but it's not dense because religious struggles and trauma symptoms are very much connected. No, it's actually two separate countries. But there are very strong bridges. For network analysis, you see a correlation of 0.3. This is very high. So the highest is between negative self-concept and ultimate meaning struggles. So that what clinicians then interpret would be the target for research of intervention, at least, or the first target for intervention, actually. And negative self-concept, so feeling yourself worthless or of not having enough value. This is actually the strongest central node. So this is Zurich of this system, connecting all other cities together with the divine struggles. So perceiving God as punishing, abandoning, or being angry with God. But there is good news. This not overlapping item of daily spiritual experience. So it's divine closeness. These are theistic items. How close do you feel to God? They have opposite direction. So the more close women in our sample felt with God, the less trauma symptoms, the less struggles they felt. But we cannot interpret it fully because, of course, people with trauma do not have disturbed emotional regulation. They experience just things less. So good news. All the robust findings I showed you, they replicated. So I only mentioned these that were robust and worked for both samples. Network comparison tests did not detect any difference in the edges, so it's also not very often. But the sample, completely independent one in 1 year, showed the same result, the same hub, the same central nodes, the same direction of edges, what I just mentioned. So I think it's just a nice map to start the research from, to look into self-compassion, to look into and advise meaning-oriented therapies or agency-oriented therapies for women struggling or believers who go to trauma-informed pastoral carers and so on. But also it's Yeah, a way to start adapting different interventions. For example, in Orthodox tradition, there is hesychasm, inner contemplative prayer that includes divine closeness, also breathing exercises, also awareness, and also self-worthiness. So these more culturally sensitive interventions are something I would prescribe to those who try to care and help this population. I'm open to the discussion now.